up, you beautiful collectors? This is Optibotimus coming at you with another video review. And on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the new NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1/4 scale RAPHAEL. Now, thanks to the folks at NECA, we are finally getting definitive versions of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as they appeared in the 1990 live-action film. And RAPHAEL here is the second release. For the package, you got that very classic look with the turtles kind of peeking out from a sewer. As you come up, you can see you have an open window, and then on the inside, you have the one and only RAPHAEL himself. Being one of the huge fan favorites, especially for this film, I was actually kind of surprised that they released this guy as early as they did. I figured they'd hold off on him till the end, but I'm not complaining. I'm happy to have him. But you come around here to the side of the package, you got a really cool image of Raph with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle logo. Opposite side here has that same kind of look, and you can see that great detail in there, especially with this scar. That's wonderful. On the back, you got a few more of those product shots, and then as you come down to the bottom, you can see an actual movie still from the promotional stuff, the original movie. And it says, now you can catch America's favorite green teens in their first live-action blockbuster film. After wading in a puddle of radioactive waste, these radical reptiles are transformed into New York City's greatest crime-fighting quartet. RAPHAEL's a skilled psi-wielding ninja. Beware, when he gets angry, you don't want to be around. This highly detailed action figure stands at 16.5 inches tall and features 30 points of articulation, including double elbows to fully showcase RAPHAEL's ability to battle it out. Absolutely terrific. So very thrilled to finally be getting these figures. But for the packaging on this guy, that's about it. So without further ado, let's get him out here and see how cool he actually is. Alright guys, so here we have RAPHAEL opened up and out of his packaging. And again, NECA has done an absolutely amazing job with this figure. One thing that I'll say though, and I didn't really even notice it until I got it in hand, I was able to look at it up close and personal, is that there's a fairly substantial amount of reused parts on this figure. And I'm really surprised by it because the amount of paint difference really does separate this from looking like Donatello. So I didn't expect it to be a lot of reused parts, but it is, and it does still look considerably different, so I have to give a lot of props to NECA for that. In terms of the body, it's almost exactly the same in terms of the sculpting. Some aspects are a little bit different. Obviously, the head is a completely new piece. One of the other parts that is reused but changed a little bit is the shell here. When you take a look at the back, you can see that there's a lot of scratches that are kind of put throughout it. The main part of the shell though is all just reused, but all these extra little scratches are added to it to give RAPHAEL here a little bit of a different look. What's amazing though is, like I said, you wouldn't almost even notice it unless you got really close and looked at it. The paint detail really does separate this from looking like Donatello, and I still think that this is a top-notch figure. Now, in terms of his accessories, again, a lot of the parts here are reused, but you do get a couple new pieces. Obviously, you do get his size. These are the most important pieces for him, and these turned out great. I do kind of wish that they were made out of metal, but I'll live. You can see absolutely gorgeous wrapping throughout the handle and the little prongs that come up here. Great paint variation on the blade. I guess it's a blade itself. I mean, a lot of dirt. Really very cool. Both of them have that amazing amount of detail and just beautifully capture how they looked in the film themselves. He does come with a slice of pizza. It is the exact same piece of pizza, but you do have some slight paint differences on it. You can see you got like a little bit more like sauce on there, but you can see that it is the same sculpt. It's just a slightly different kind of paint wash throughout it, but I don't mind it. I mean, you can see like you got a little bit more of a burnt section right here. I mean, it's all coming from the same pizza pie, so I guess they would basically look the same, so I don't mind that really all that much. And then he does come with several different hands. You can see he's got some kind of relaxed ones here. Well, they're not even all that relaxed. relaxed. I mean, this one right here is kind of relaxed with just like his finger hanging out there. I guess you could have him hold a piece of pizza in that hand if you really wanted to. And then you have a little bit more of an open one. This one works really well for holding that canister of ooze. But then he does come with, now you got a pointed one. I do believe Donatello came with that as well. Comes with just a straight one. Again, Donatello, I believe, came with that. He comes with a pair of hands here, though, that are different. Now, first off, he does have a pair of good holding hands here for his size. Now, again, I do believe Donatello came with ones that are almost exactly like this. But you do have a separate set that you can see are sculpted the exact same, slightly different paint variation. But what's different is that you got this joint here that moves horizontally on one set. Now you have one that moves vertically, so he can really do a good job of being posed with his size. You can see that some of the little paint stuff here does flake off here, mostly in the peg section here. I'm getting a lot of that kind of all over my little table here, but I love that. I think that's a really nice addition. It allows you to get some really cool action poses with him holding the size. But for his accessories, that's it. And now, obviously, coming to the body, this is one part that it does, at least on mine, put me off a little bit. You have the belt section right here, and you can see you got the little holder things. It appears like it's not centered properly. So like this one here slides down fairly decently, but you can see that it rubs on his leg here. Same thing with this. This one's almost even worse. I can really feel it kind of pushing and putting pressure on the plastic sides themselves. So I don't want to push them all the way down. This one, like I said, is a little bit easier. This one is really kind of rough. Now you can kind of move this around because it is a separate piece from the main part of the body, and you can kind of mitigate that. Obviously you can get it looking like that, but you can see how it does kind of bend it a little, especially here on this side. You can kind of see it bowing out a little. That does bother me, but I think it's just basically how the belt here was applied. I don't know if it's maybe too low or something. You got a section right here that is kind of glued to the shell, and then you got a front section right here, but you can kind of see how it like droops down right there. So that's one aspect that does kind of disappoint me on it. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, you can actually get it looking pretty decent still. I just don't like, I mean, and again, I mean, you can see it kind of bowing out. That does kind of bother me. But for the figure though, the guy does look terrific. Now, coming in to take a closer look at Raph, like I said, the biggest difference that you're going to notice on this figure when you get it up close and personal is going to be the head sculpt. But it is an absolute wonderful one. It literally looks like this jumped right out of the screen. The amazing amount of detail. I love the very stern look. You can see his teeth in there. A lot of detail and expression in his eyes. I don't think that my camera captures it or does it enough justice. When you look at him, I mean, there's a gloss, there's a life in there. That might be one of the most underrated but beautiful details about this entire figure. Just the fact that NECA was able to capture so much life in the eyes themselves. You can see that he does have all those little kind of spots throughout him, much like all the turtles had, and something that a lot of figures have lacked. Great shading throughout the entire piece. You can notice that the bandana here is a molded piece, but it looks terrific. Then when you come to the back section, you have an actual cloth goods section that's kind of glued right on there. It very nicely blends in. Kind of wish that, I mean, you can see there is some dirt on it, which I do like. I wish it was a little bit more ripped up and a little bit more tattered, but that's not too bad. If I was that bothered by it, I could do it myself. One other little very minor thing is the scratch right here. Absolutely necessary to be on this sculpt. I mean, again, that just gives character to Raphael, but overall, just gorgeous looking likeness. Now, the rest of the body, as I talked about, it is primarily the exact same as Donatello. I mean, everything from the front section here to the underlining body, the arms, everything else really does seem the same. You'll see that when I do a comparison. The only thing that's slightly different is the shell. Now, when you look at it, the main mold of it is exactly the same. And again, I'll show this off, but you do have these scratches that are actually molded in there. You can feel it. But the overall shape of the shell is the same. So does that bother me? No, not really. And honestly, in terms of the body being the same, I can't even really complain that much about it. I'm just mentioning it to you guys. I don't know if that's the way that it was in the film. I mean, it very well could have been that the suits were exactly the same, so it just stands to reason that NECA would recreate it this way. Same kind of thing here with the shell. I mean, we do know that he had a lot more scratches, so that's obviously there. But as big of a turtle fan as I am, I've never really sat and paid attention. Plus, it was a fairly dark movie, so you probably couldn't see it, but you come down here to the belt, really nice detail. Now, like I was talking about, if you put it in like this, now I kind of complained, I think it looks a little bit better like that when you have it displayed in his belt. If you go like this, on the sides and bring it more in and bring it in the other one here, if you slope it down like that, it's not as bad, to be totally honest. I just don't think it looks all that good like that. I think it looks a little bit more dynamic if it's kind of off to the side like so. But great detail on the belt section as well. I mean, that is actually just a piece of rubber for the most part, but great detail. You got some nice coloring with the rivets and such. Again, you look at the arms and you can see all the different little pimple sort of things throughout the entire thing. Same detail here with the leg. Great molded in detail with the knee pads. The elbow pads are great as well. I do kind of wish it was a little bit softer of a material, just so you could get a little bit more of that articulation. You do have double joints here for like the elbows and the knees, but because of the hard nature of the padding, you really only get, and I'll go over this when I do the articulation, you only really get about a 90-degree kind of bend there. So it would have been nice to get a little bit more. You got some great detail with like the veins and things. I mean, I don't know if Leo will have the same kind of molded kind of body and or reused parts. I would imagine, though, that somebody like Michelangelo, who's a little bit smaller, would probably have a slightly different build. But still, the overall look for the guy is terrific. Now, for a comparison, obviously, here's Raph. And here's my boy, Donatello. And again, like I said, you can see that there is a difference in terms of the paint detail, which does make it stand out a lot differently. You can see he's got a lot more of these little pimple things on him, kind of like here in the arms, but the sculpting does look exactly the same. And now coming back to the shell like I was talking about, you can see that, again, paint variations are there, but the sculpting looks identical. I mean, I'm like seeing all the same sort of patterns on just the base sculpt. You got the extra scratches and everything, which is nice, but very much the exact same. Again, you come down to like the legs and you can see like the striations are the same. It's very difficult because these are very large figures. Even the like elbow pads and such are the same, and they have the little kind of tie sections on the wrist sections. But everything else, I mean, it is the same. But I mean, even when you stand in here, I mean, if I didn't point it out to you, you probably wouldn't notice it unless you got real close. And I'm just kind of angling this so that it stands. But unless you got real up close to these guys, you probably wouldn't notice it all that much. That's just a testament to the paint detail and difference in terms of the paint variations that NECA did to really kind of separate these two from looking the same. Now, first articulation, because it is the same body, it is going to be the same. It does get a little bit more limited here in the neck. One of the differences with the head is that Raph has this little kind of double chin thing that comes down here that does kind of limit some of the rotation. You can kind of get it looking about that far. I mean, playing around with it, you can get it kind of moving up and down a little. It does rotate fairly decently. It kind of clears that area fairly well. I can't really complain too much. I do love the ab section here. Again, much like Donatello, you have an entire section of plastic here that, as you fold this forward, it fills in that gap there. I mean, kind of pulling that out as much as possible. I mean, I love the way that looks. So as you flex him forward, it doesn't look like you got a giant gap there. That just genius. It kind of is a bit of a ball joint right down here. I would imagine it's down here in this section. The arms here, you can extend them. You got to really break them in to be able to do it. And it's hard to get leverage, but you can kind of get them out to about there, maybe a little bit higher if you really worked it some. Obviously, they rotate very nicely. He does have the double joint here at the elbow, but again, it really only gets you about a 90-degree bend. If this was a little bit softer of a material, I think that you could get a better range of motion with it. It could, over time, damage this, so that might be why they decided to go with a harder material. But it's still, I mean, it would have been nice. He does rotate at the elbow section as well. The wrists, depending on which ones you have in, can move forward and back. They can rotate. If you have those other ones, they do hinge up and down, which again, with the size, work really very nice. He does have fairly nice ratchet joints moving in and out, and then forward and back. He rotates at the upper part of the thigh. He's got, well, maybe it's just two. I think I screwed this up in the Donatello one as well. I don't think it's actually a double joint down here for the knee. It does rotate a little, but because of the sculpt, it's fairly limited. But yeah, it's only actually one bend. So a decent range of motion there. It does kind of, again, get a little bit restricted because of the harder material of his knee pads, but it's not too bad. It stands there very, very nicely. The ankles do rotate. They kind of pivot side to side a little bit. They move forward and back decently. So yeah, lots of articulation points in it. You're not going to be creating a lot of overly dynamic poses with him, just because the sculpting does kind of limit some of those poses. But the overall look of the figure, like I said, just standing there, I think is wonderful. Like I've said before, these are the definitive versions of the movie Turtles, and NECA has nailed it. I know a lot of people talk about how they would love to have 7-inch versions of these. I don't know if we're ever going to get those. And honestly, for me, the size, you know, with all the stuff that I have, would be better at a 7-inch scale. It wouldn't take up as much space in my collection. But the fact that they're big, they just catch your eye. So, I mean, while I wouldn't mind having 7-inch versions, I actually prefer these because they are much more dynamic in my collection. And with just the two of them are without question centerpieces of my display. And at the end of the day, we once again have an absolute amazing representation of Raphael from the 1990 movie. Being totally honest, I am more impressed with Donatello than I was here with Raphael. While the paint variation is really very nice, it is a little bit upsetting that the figure is essentially just a repaint. Again, I can't knock NECA too much for that because the actual suits may have been identical to one another. But I gotta believe that sculpting wise there were some differences. Also accessory wise, I feel he's a little bit light. We pretty much got everything with Raph here that we got with Donatello. I do appreciate the additional hands with the different sort of flex points, but this figure actually did cost a little bit more than Donatello, at least through NECA's official retail sites, such as Amazon and eBay. So I don't know exactly why this guy cost more than Donnie, but for a figure that's essentially just a repaint, I don't necessarily understand why it's more expensive. You know, I don't necessarily know what you could have included with Raph in terms of accessories that I would have liked. Maybe if they gave us, like, say, a trench coat and a hat, that would have actually been kind of cool. So while I still absolutely love the figure and would recommend him all day long, for me, I do feel as if he's a step back than that Donnie. I am curious to see going forward if there will be sculpting changes to Leo or Mikey, but Leo I don't necessarily think they would need to do anything different, because between Raph, Donnie, and Leo, they all are about the same size. Mikey was a little bit smaller, but I guess we'll just sit back and wait. As I said though, at the end of the day, I still absolutely love the figure and without question recommend picking him up. These are the definitive versions of the 1990 movie. No other company, including Playmates, has even come close to recreating those 90 figures as beautifully as NECA has. So despite the very minor things against this guy, I still absolutely love him. So if Raph here is a figure that you'd like to add to your collection, he will be hitting various retailers fairly soon. So good luck and happy hunting. Or if you go through Big Bad Toy Store, he's actually cheaper. He will take a little bit longer to get. As I said, I got this directly from NECA's website. So if you're a little bit patient, you can save a few bucks by going through Big Bad Toy Store. So all you have to do for that is click on the link down in the video description. You'll go to BBTS where you can check out availability on this guy, as well as the rest of the wide range of NECA action figures. But beyond that, guys, that's about it. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. This has been Optibotimus. Don't forget that if you like this video, to please hit that thumbs up button. It goes a long way towards helping me out, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, be sure to subscribe in case you haven't already subscribed. That way you get instant email notifications whenever I upload a new video, and you never miss out on a future review of mine. Or if you're already subscribed, be sure to click on that little bell right below this video, and double check your settings to make sure that they're set so that you get those email notifications. And as always, until next time, be excellent to each other.